Global fertility rates to plunge in decades ahead, new report says. A new study projects that global fertility rates, which have been declining in all countries since 1950, will continue to plummet through the end of the century, resulting in a profound demographic shift. The fertility rate is the average number of children born to a woman in her lifetime. Globally, that number has gone from 4.84 in 1950 to 2.23 in 2021 and will continue to drop to 1.59 by 2100. According to the new analysis, which was based on the global burden of diseases, injuries, and risk factor study 2021, a research effort led by the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation (IHME) at the University of Washington. The study was published Wednesday in the journal The Lancet. What we are experiencing now and have been experiencing for decades is something that we have not seen before in human history, which is a large-scale, cross-national, cross-cultural shift toward preferring and having smaller families, said Dr. Jennifer D. Squiba, a demographer and author of 8 Billion and Counting: How Sex, Death, and Migration Shape Our World, who wasn't involved with the new research. Dr. Christopher Murray, senior author of the study and director of IHME, said there are many reasons for this shift, including increased opportunities for women in education and employment and better access to contraception and reproductive health services. Dr. Gitau Mburu, a scientist in the World Health Organization's Department of Sexual and Reproductive Health and Research, who wrote a comment that was published alongside this study, said in an email to CNN that economic factors such as the direct cost of raising children, the perceived risk of death to children, and changing values of gender equality and self-fulfillment are all forces that may contribute to declining fertility rates. The relative contribution of these factors varies over time and by country, he added. To maintain a stable population number, countries need a total fertility rate of 2.1 children per woman, a number called the replacement level. When the fertility rate falls below the replacement level, population begin to shrink. The new analysis estimates that 46% of countries had a fertility rate below replacement level in 2021. That number will increase to 97% by 2100, meaning the population of almost all countries in the world will be declining by the end of this century. A previous analysis by IHME published in The Lancet in 2020 predicted that the world population will peak in 2064 at around 9.7 billion and then decline to 8.8 billion by 2100. Another projection by the UN World Population Prospect 2022 predicted world population to peak at 10.4 billion in the 2080s. Regardless of the exact timing of peak world population, it will likely begin declining in the second half of the century, with dramatic geopolitical, economic, and societal consequences. Although fertility rates are declining in all countries, the rate of decline is uneven, creating a shift in the distribution of live births around the globe. The study predicts that the share of the world live births in low-income regions will nearly double from 18% in 2021 to 35% in 2100. Sub-Saharan Africa alone will account for 1 in every 2 children born on the planet by 2100. This shift in the distribution of live births will create a demographically divided world, where high-income countries face the consequences of an aging population and declining workforce, while low-income regions maintain a high birth rate that strain existing resources. An important contribution of the study is to highlight the demographic contrast between the richest country and the poorest country. Globally, births will increasingly concentrated in the areas of the world most vulnerable to climate change, resource scarcity, political instability, poverty, and infant mortality. On one end of the spectrum, high-income countries with plummeting fertility rates will experience a shift towards an aging population that will strain national health insurance, social security programs, and healthcare infrastructure. They will also have to contend with labor shortage. The researchers suggest that ethical and effective policies that encourage immigration and labor innovations like advancement in artificial intelligence could help reduce some of the economic effect of this demographic shift. The analysis also look at the efficacy of pronatal policies that some countries have implemented, such as child care subsidies, extended parental leaves, and tax incentives. The projections show an effect size of no more than 0.2 additional live births per female if pronatal policies are implemented, which doesn't suggest a strong, sustained rebound. Although policies supporting parents may be beneficial to society for other reasons, they do not seem to change the trajectory of the current demographic shifts. The researchers emphasize that low fertility rates and the modest effect of the pronatal policies shouldn't be used to justify measures that coerce women into having more children, such as limiting reproductive rights and restricting access to contraceptives. There is a real threat in some governments trying to pressure women to have more children. It's very easy to go from encouraging women to have more children to being a little bit more coercive. A shrinking population poses great economic and societal challenges, but it also has environmental benefits. A smaller global population could alleviate strain in global resources and reduce carbon emissions. However, increasing consumption per capita due to economic development could offset this gain. On the other end of the spectrum, more live births in low-income countries will threaten the security of food, water, and other resources, and will make improving child mortality even more difficult. Political instability and security issues may also arise in these vulnerable areas. The predictions show that improving access to modern contraceptive and female education, two primary drivers of fertility, would reduce fertility rate and limit the increase of live births in low-income areas. In sub-Saharan Africa, universal female education or universal contraceptive access by 2030 would result in a total fertility rate of about 2.3 in 2050, compared with 2.7 in the reference scenario. Additionally, this change would contribute to women's empowerment, which has important societal benefit. The main strain comes from our inability to adjust. How do we adjust to what we have? I think that is where we really lack innovation and political will. Scuba said she thinks about three alternative approaches that society can take to adapt to a shrinking, aging global population. Our scenario is the status quo world, where we go about our business as usual, maintain economic policy that rely on continued population growth, and perhaps implement a few pronatal policies that don't make much of a difference. This will not solve any of the economic and societal problems that this study outlines. The second scenario is a fearful world in which fear, mongering, and alarmism take over and women are coerced into having more children. And the final scenario is a resilient world, where we realize that we are not going to save the number of children people have, but instead learn to adapt our system to the new reality. Studies like this one that model and predict global demographic changes are important because they can inform proactive planning for a resilient future. However, projections should always be interpreted with caution. It is more helpful to look at the overall trends instead of specific detail. The most useful thing is to zoom out and say there is no doubt there has been a shift. It's changing. So, what do we do? birth rates in rich countries halved to hit record low. Birth rates in the world-rich economy have more than halved since 1960 to hit a record low, according to a study that urged countries to prepare for a lower fertility future. The average number of children per woman across the 38 most industrialized countries has fallen from 3.3 in 1960 to 1.5 in 2022, according to a study by the OECD published on Thursday. The fertility rate is now well below the replacement level of 2.1 children per woman, at which country's population is considered to be stable without immigration, in all the group's member countries except for Israel. This decline will change the face of societies, communities, and families, and potentially have large effect on economic growth and prosperity. Faltering population growth acts as a drag on economic expansion. Across the EU, the rise in overall labor force participation will soon not be enough to compensate for its falling working-age population, exacerbating labor shortage, according to the IMF and European Commission 2024 Aging Report. Coupled with rising life expectancy, low births also put pressure on public finances, as they leave fewer people contributing to tax revenues needed to pay for the rising costs of an aging population. A lack of pupils is also driving an increase in school closure across Europe, Japan, and South Korea. William Adema, co-author of the report and senior economist in the OECD Social Policy Division, said countries can support fertility rates by implementing policies that promote gender equality and a more equitable sharing of work and parenting activities. The study found a positive association between female employment rates and higher fertility rates, but found that the cost of housing was an increasing barrier to having children. But even family-friendly policies are unlikely to raise birth rates to replacement level. A low fertility future would require a focus on immigration policies, as well as measures which can help people to stay healthy and work longer, and productivity improvement more generally. France and Ireland have the highest fertility rate in Europe, with Anglophone and Nordic countries typically being at the top end of the scale. Hungary has raised its fertility rate to the OECD average over the past decade, with spending on family benefits accounting for more than 3% of gross domestic product, according to the latest national data. The lowest fertility rate were recorded in Southern Europe and Japan at about 1.2 children per woman, with South Korea having the lowest birth rate at about 0.7. However, a fall in birth rates in countries with extensive policies to support families such as Finland, France, and Norway has been a big surprise. The OECD said the second demographic transition, a trend that marks the shift in attitudes towards greater individual freedom and alternative life goals and living arrangement, helped to explain the decline in family formation. Childlessness more than doubled in Italy, Spain, and Japan among women born in 1975 compared with women born in 1955. Some 20 to 24% of women in Austria, Germany, Italy, and Spain are childless among those born in 1975, with the figure rising to 28% in Japan. Mothers across the OECD on average had their first child at nearly 30 in 2020, up from the average age of 26.5 in 2000. The figure rises to over 30 in Italy, Spain, and South Korea. Adema said delays having children increase the risk that childbearing doesn't occur at all. There is an increased desire to pursue life objectives which do not necessarily involve children, he added.